students, welcome to another exciting time with me, Dr. Blessing and Tamu, on the Psychologist NG TV, and today we are going to continue our lectures on motivation. Now, for ease of understanding, each unit has been broken down to short videos, multiple short videos to cover each unit. And please ensure that you go through each of these units, each of these short videos. Today we're going to be discussing some concepts under the unit's motivation. Now, these are some basic concepts that you need to understand, for you to be able to completely grasp, the concept of motivation. Even when you begin to study the theories of motivation, you'll encounter these concepts. That's why it's important to understand them, in isolation first. Now, we're going to start with the concept of needs. The concept of needs. And what are needs in relation to motivation? Needs are considered under the biological theory, the cognitive theory, and a couple of other theories as a basic motivator for human behavior. Okay, so these are biological, social, or psychological deficiencies in our bodies, in human beings, that needs to be met. Okay, so there are deficiencies, and these deficiencies drive behavior, and these are goal-directed behaviors towards meeting the needs. I'll take that again. So needs are either biological, social, or psychological deficiencies that drive, behaviors towards meeting the needs, okay, towards overcoming the deficiencies. So they drive goal-directed behaviors, For instance, if you are thirsty, that's a need that's created, a biological need, and that's going to drive you to take an action to satisfy that need, to meet a deficiency. There's a deficiency in your biological makeup, your deficiency of water that needs to be met. And so because you're thirsty, it serves as a need, it drives your behavior to satisfy that need, or to, reduce the deficiency or overcome the deficiency, so to say. Now, the next concept that we are going to discuss is hierarchy of needs. But before we go over to discussing hierarchy of needs, let me ask you a question. Now, you're engaging in the behavior, you're learning. So what need has driven you to engage in this behavior? What need has driven you, to watch this video? Is there a need? First of all, think about it. Is there a need? Is there a deficiency that you want to overcome that has driven you to come enroll in school and has also pushed you into watching this video? If there is such a deficiency, let me know what it is. Let me know the need that's driven you, to enroll in school and even to take this course and to watch this video. Please drop that in the comments for me. So now let's talk about the hierarchy of needs. Now, it is believed that needs do not have the same value. So that means that some needs are of higher value than other needs. And generally, I think this is subjective, because what might be of a higher value to me as a need may not be the same for you. For instance, if you're starving, you haven't had any food for 5 days, let's say, or 3 to 4 days even. Now, for you, food will have a higher value as a need, than maybe a Louis Vuitton bag, because the Vuitton bag will not satisfy your need for food, at that time, because you're starved of food. So for you, food will be a need of a higher value. So there's a hierarchy of needs. And we're going to talk about this more when we talk about the self-actualization theory of Abraham Maslow's. Okay, so needs do not have the same value. Some needs are of higher value than others, and this is somewhat subjective. Now let's go over to discussing the concept of drive. Now, so what is drive? So drive is actually a psychological state that energizes action towards meeting a need. Drive is said to be a psychological state that energizes action towards meeting a need. It's actually a hypothetical construct, because you cannot see drive. You can only infer that there's drive by observing behavior. So you cannot directly measure drive. You cannot directly see and measure drive. So it's a hypothetical construct. It's considered to be a psychological, state that energizes behavior. Now, there's actually like a very thin line between needs and drives, and some schools of thought in psychology actually use the word drive and need interchangeably. So it's hard to tell the difference. While some schools of thought have tried to differentiate between needs and drives by saying that needs are biological or physiological, while drives are psychological. But if you begin to delve into Clark Hall's theory of drive reduction, where he described drive as, he tried to quantify drive as being hours of deprivation, and then needs as hours of staying without food, it becomes difficult to tell the difference. The next concept we are going to be discussing is the concept of instincts. Now, according to the instincts theory of motivation, instincts are defined as innate, automatic, unlearned, goal-directed behaviors that are geared towards meeting our biological needs. So they are automatic, they are unlearned, involuntary most of the times, and they are usually geared towards meeting our biological needs. Nobody teaches you instinctive behaviors. Now, let's take a look at breathing, for instance. The moment you are born and you land planet Earth, you begin to breathe without even realizing that you're breathing. Nobody teaches you to breathe. Instinctively, because there's a need for air, you begin to breathe. And even when you grow up and become more aware of your surroundings, you still breathe instinctively. You don't even realize that you're breathing. Except, of course, if you're a mindfulness practitioner, then you become aware of your breath, as you take it in and then as you exhale. Now, let's look at another instinctive behavior. Now, when a newborn baby is born, nobody teaches the baby to suck. The moment you put the baby to the breast, the baby begins to suck to meet the need for hunger, So it's an instinctive behavior. It's innate. Baby is born with the ability to suck. So those are instinctive behaviors. Now, Tenbergen, 1989, described instincts as, automatic, involuntary behaviors that are consistently released in the presence of stimuli. So he said these instinctive behaviors are consistently released in the presence of stimuli. Now, let's look at the example we gave of the baby sucking, for instance. So it means that each time the baby is put to the breast, he begins to suck. But I find a problem with that definition, because I believe that instinctive behaviors do not necessarily need to be consistent. Taking again the example of the baby sucking. Now, if the need has been met and there's no deficiency, so if the baby is not hungry and you put the baby to the breast, the baby may not suck. So they do not have to be consistently released, except when there's, a need, like there's hunger and there's some deficiency in the individual system. So that's about instincts. And now we'll be talking about another concept, the concept of homeostasis. Now, this is tied to the biological theories of motivation that says that motivated behaviors are geared towards maintaining homeostasis, maintaining a state of balance in the individual. So homeostasis just refers to a state of physiological balance in the individual. So a state where there's a balance, there's an equilibrium, a state of equilibrium physiologically in the individual. So all of your organs, all of your system, everything, they are operating at an optimum level. There's level of balance. The hormones are balanced. There's no deficiency. There's no imbalance. That's the state of homeostasis, and that's one of the concepts that you'll be dealing with as we discuss motivation further. Now we are also going to discuss the concept of arousal. The concept of arousal. Now, arousal is a physiological activation that is geared towards, preserving the individual, towards meeting our survival needs. So when there's, a need for survival, when our survival is challenged, then there's an activation. We say we are in a state of arousal. For instance, the general adaptation syndrome, arousal that is, activated because of stress, or just because the body senses some form of threat, or there's fear in the individual. There's a physiological activation to help you, combat the threat and overcome your fears. That's the state of arousal. Now we're going to talk about dimensions of motivation, and we're going to talk about two major dimensions of motivation: the intrinsic and the extrinsic, motivation.